Hi everyone, Mike here, and today I'm going to talk to you about how I use drafts as a template engine for things. I am a big fan of checklists or project templates for all kinds of things in my life. You can click the link in the description down below to get a background on all that if you like. But suffice to say, I have a ton of them, and they help me do more work with less effort and fewer mistakes. For this video, we are going to talk about when my elementary-aged son gets invited to a birthday party, but this is the process that I use for all of the irregularly timed projects in my life that can't be addressed with a recurring project in things. Small stuff like birthday parties, bigger things like flying across the country, and even huge, multifaceted, multi-stage projects in work that take a year or more to complete. All of them use this same process. No matter the scale, I use drafts to write, store, and revise these templates. I've anonymized this, but here is the project for when my son gets invited to a birthday party. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about all the action items on this list, but let's talk about the more important parts of the formatting that make this work with things. First, this project is based on the Taskpaper format. There is a link in the description to the Taskpaper documentation, but I will give you the bits that I know in order to make this work. Because my first line is all the way to the left and has a colon at the end of the line with no spaces behind it, this is a project. You can see this bracketed placeholder throughout the draft, but we'll come to that later. You can also see that I have more text that looks just like the project in the first line, but since these are indented, these are going to become headings inside of the project in things. Then I have another level of indentation with lines that start with a hyphen. These are the individual action items for this project. My drafts theme might not make this a very drastic distinction, but if you look at the end of the line where my action items are, you can see the metadata for these action items in a slightly different color. They start with an @ symbol, and while this example only uses when and do, there are more types of data supported like areas and tags. But you can see in these date-related metadata options, I have things like 2 weeks before party day or today. One of the things I love about this workflow is the date math that gets taken care of for me, so I can truly trust my system to remember this birthday project and remind me of specific action items when necessary. Finally, you can see purple italicized text indented under 2 of the action items. These are notes that will become the text in the notes field for these action items in things. So that is a properly formatted project using the Taskpaper syntax. However, that's not very helpful for me. By itself, I need to get that information over to things, and I would really love for that placeholder data to be filled in before that happens. Fear not, there are a pair of drafts actions that will do just that. First, a huge shout out to Peter Davison Reiber for creating these actions. I've linked to his website down below where he goes through the ins and outs of both of them. However, I just wanted to take a second before I showed them to you to make sure you know who made them and to say thank you, Peter. The first action we're going to use here is the Mustache prompt action. This will look through my template and pull out anything that matches the format of squiggly bracket, text, close squiggly bracket, and give it to me in a drafts prompt window. And because things is going to be responsible for processing this date information, you can answer these questions in any way that things understands. So you can use a specific date, or you could say next Friday. So I'll answer these questions and hit OK. The Mustache prompt action will create a new draft with the text from my template, but filled in with the answers from my prompts. This leaves my original template alone so I can use it again in the future. Now, it looks different because my default syntax highlighting in drafts is Markdown, but I assure you everything is correct. I can come down to the bottom and switch the highlighting to Taskpaper, and it looks a lot more familiar. So we have a project with relevant information, but it's not in things yet. So we're going to use things parser, also created by Peter, to go ahead and move this data over for us. All we have to do is double-click things parser in the action list and then follow our project over to things and see how it turned out. Since my example project didn't specify an area for this project to go into, it's over here by itself. But for my actual templates, I have the areas identified so the project ends up in the correct area automatically. You can do that by using the @area metadata tag at the end of the line for the project title. You can also see that all the dates are correct and my notes are filled in too. I can't stress enough how helpful these project templates are for me. And because they're in drafts, how easy they are to use anywhere I am. You just have to remember to use them. And I do that in a few different ways, so let me share that with you too. For the birthday invites, I just do this on demand as soon as we learn about the party. Usually with the invitation in hand, I pull out my phone and go through this process. But in other cases, I need more structure. In my day job, I'm a technical trainer, but my live courses aren't on a regular schedule. So I have a recurring reminder every Friday to look at the calendar for my upcoming week and run the appropriate checklist for any classes that I have. Some things are on an even longer scale, like hosting Thanksgiving dinner. We have our extended family over to our home for that event. However, there are 3 members of the family who work in healthcare, so we often have to coordinate a day that is not actually Thanksgiving to host the meal. So I have a recurring project in Things called Schedule Thanksgiving Dinner. And its due date is November 1st, but I have a when date of 15 days before that. So I use the second half of the month of October to randomly pester my wife until she tells me what the day is going to be. And then I take that information and run the Thanksgiving dinner checklist with all the appropriate dates for the meal. You might not want checklists for Thanksgiving dinner or birthday parties, but I bet you have multiple projects in your life that could benefit from something like this. If you want to implement this specific solution into your life, you're going to need Things 3 and Drafts with a Pro subscription installed on the same device. Then you'll need to install the Mustache prompts and Things Parser actions in Drafts. Links to all that stuff in the description down below. Once you have all the software in place, I suggest you start small with a simple project. For me, I usually create a new project template after I've done the project once or twice and have my general bearings on the process. This isn't the video to talk to you about how to define action items or how to write a template, but I will say one thing that is on every single project template I create is that the last action item on the project is update blank checklist. Whatever the checklist is that I just used, I have an action item on there to update that specific checklist with anything that I've learned or any new thoughts or discoveries that I've had about that process. This reminds me to iterate and update my systems. Maybe it's something that I've forgotten on a previous process that needs to be included, or perhaps it's a new thing that I've learned, like a new piece of technology I want to incorporate into future versions of this project. Whatever it is, the point is you don't have to start with a perfect template. You just have to try to make it better each time. And by having that final action item be a reminder to do that, and having that action item have a link to the draft in the notes, is a great way to make sure that you're constantly iterating and improving this project over time. And that's how I use drafts and things together to work at a higher level with less stress. If you need to rewatch any part of this video, there are timestamps in the video description down below. Down there, you'll also find a link to a blog post on my site that has all the details and supporting material to help you implement this solution in your own life. I hope this video helped you. If it did, please consider liking, sharing, or subscribing. There will always be more content like this coming.